Welcome to another episode on the Lazy Equity YouTube channel. Today we are going to deep dive into the roadmap. The roadmap is a planning tool for different profiles of property investors that earn different incomes and understanding what their living arrangements and lifestyles today mean for property investing for a successful planning journey to create your portfolio of property wealth into the future. Basically, what do I need to do today to get me to where I want to be in the future through property wealth? If you like content like this, make sure you like and subscribe. It really helps us to create more engaging pieces and help to educate those who are looking for understanding and guidance through their journey. Today, like I said, we're going to go into the roadmap and we're going to be using two different investor profiles. One high income earner and one median income earner. The median income earner being a $100,000 and the high income earner being a $200,000 income earner. Typically, the labor force in Australia has mostly these two types of demographics. We're going to start with the higher income earner. So the first thing we're going to do is have a look at how much a $200,000 income earner, generally speaking, would be able to borrow from the bank according to today's typical lending climate and what the debt to income ratio currently looks like for somebody who already owns a property. The property that we are going to assume they already own is this property here, number 12 Roland Avenue in Bolander. Now, this property, we're going to assume it was purchased at a $500,000 price. It's now got a current valuation of $850,000. It was purchased in 2022. The current loan balance is a $400,000 loan. So this was on an interest-only loan. The property rent at the moment is sitting at $750 per week. It was purchased with a $500 per week rental income at the time, and it's in a strong growth aggressive market. Now that property is inside the client's portfolio already, and it's created equity for the investor to use towards a new purchase. At this stage, the $200,000 investor would be able to purchase another property at the value of $920,000. But this is the top end of their servicing profile. For this investor, that basically means that they are servicing towards all of the cash coming from the equity of the purchase before. Their loan is sitting at 80% because they're putting down a 20% deposit, and their DTI is sitting at 5%. Now, this keeps a very small amount of margin for the next purchase. Because of that, we can see that if this purchase was to go ahead, that purchase would happen in June 2026, and the next one would only be available in January of 2032. Now, this is assuming we are only using the equity gains inside the portfolio to purchase the next property. But if we open up and we have a look at the DTI, the debt to income ratio, we can see here that it's sitting quite high at the 5 times mark or the 5x mark. They will not lend to an investor if they are holding 5 times the debt according to the loan amount that they are applying for. So for that reason, the next purchase has to be pushed out all the way until 2032 in February. Now that property, as we can see over here, if we open that up, we'll see here that the property has got the ability to be purchased from the equity which is being created. That's not the problem. The problem comes down to where the ongoing servicing needs to support the loan. Now, only at this stage in the future can the bank see comfort in this investor being able to service the loan from the salary that they are now creating from their employment, plus the property's rental income that are inside the portfolio at the moment. The other side of it is that the DTI here is exhausted at 5.9%. That's a very high, it's pretty much the highest you can get on a loan for the debt according to the income of the investor. That means that for this investor, there's going to be no more purchasing available for that time in the future at those price points. And those price points being the first one at $920,000 and the next one at $943,000. Now, that's not a great result because in that 10-year period of the investment cycle, that's only creating a $5 million amount inside the portfolio for the investor. There are better ways to do this for the investor, and we'll get into that shortly. But I want to show you the difference here if we go into a $100,000 earner. Now, there's very, very, very little comfort from the bank to be able to lend anything at all inside this portfolio with that income earner only generating $100,000 in today's market. Obviously, indexation goes over time and it creates the ability for more servicing, and that time will come, but not in the next 10 years for that price point to be achieved at a $920,000 mark. So the $920,000 purchase will fail. In that 10 years, we have to actually wait not 1 year, but actually 2 years for that purchase to be achieved. But by that point, you're buying an asset that's inside a market that's right at the end of your investment cycle, being 12th year, which means that you're not really going to have much growth going forward into that. So you really want to capitalize as much value that you can leverage in your portfolio as early on. So purchase at a lower price point and leverage the debt into higher value assets that will allow you to reuse those assets, valued returns in equity to buy more property. And so you can see why this is just not a good idea for an investor sitting at a $100,000 salary. In fact, it's not that it's just not a good idea, it's actually that it's just probably going to be impossible to lend that much money. So what would the right price point be for somebody who is on that $100,000 income and they were to purchase their second property? That property could come in at around $420,000. Now that property could be purchased today, which means that the next purchase would be in January of 2031. Now, this is a little bit far ahead, and potentially we want to actually be a little bit more aggressive on this idea of this profile being able to only purchase the 4 properties over that 10-year cycle. Selling down inside a portfolio obviously does have costs, so it has to make sense as to when to sell and how much to sell for. If we wanted to have a look at what it looked like to sell down the asset, the first purchase of the portfolio, to relieve the debt inside the portfolio, to create new cash from the gains that have been created from the sale and redeploy that into new purchases, we could do that by understanding potentially when would be the right idea to get those funds. Now, after a sale value of potentially $900,000 and the sale costing $27,000, the capital gains being extracted of $141,000, and this is obviously post-budget, and the remaining debt then being $400,000 to pay off, the net profit after that sale of those assets is sitting at around $330,000. If we wanted to extend that a little bit further, we could potentially take it into 2028 and almost get it up to $400K in new deployable cash into the portfolio. So we're going to do that, and we're going to plan to repurchase again in 2028. Now, taking those funds and redeploying it into the next purchase allows us to run the plan again from that point onwards in December 2028 to see how much we'd be able to get from the next purchases. Running the model from that time onwards, we could add those new properties to the portfolio. We can see that it's not potentially the best idea because we've actually gone down in value. So for this investor profile, because the ability to service those loans is restricted by the cash being generated from the salaries, this type of investor would probably want to hold a little bit longer rather than to try and deploy and repurchase again. So you can see that this is not potentially the strategy that would work for this investor because they've potentially just lost $700,000 in value over that time period. Now, this is assuming that they are purchasing from a $600,000 price point, and I'm accumulating that into the future price point of the property market at that stage. So I'm being conservative to the price point at that stage. But let's have a look at what it looks like if the $200,000 income earner were going to purchase a property within their affordability price point, this being $650,000. In that same time frame, they would be able to generate $7.5 million at a gross position. Now that is $4.3 million at a net position. But this investor now has the ability to leverage stronger because their income is stronger and they are buying at a lower price point than the $920,000. So let's have a look at what it looked like if we were to sell their first purchase. Let's try to sell this at a similar time frame. So we'll go into December of 2028. This is going to create the same amount of almost $400,000, and we'll confirm the sale, and then we'll redeploy the capital at that time in the future with new purchases from that time point onwards, again at the $600,000 mark. But this time we're going to sell property number 2. So let's go into the scenario and sell this down in 2031. Now that's only creating $265,000. Let's see if we can get a little bit more juice out of that. Great, $290K in net profit after all costs assumed. Going back into our timeline and repurchasing from that point onwards will let us then release that debt once more and allow us to leverage into new assets as we go into the next purchases. And you can see that the value has now gone up to $8.74 million. That's just because This profile has the ability to service those loans off their cash income that they create, obviously from the accommodation of the portfolio, but also from the salary and the wage that they create. Now you can see very quickly they've been able to produce another 2 purchases back to back. And that's because the servicing profile is supporting the loans which that sale has now been able to create by the profits. This means that there's basically more property inside the portfolio with the ability to grow longer into the future to create more value as that time goes on. If the investor wanted to extend out their portfolio timeline to potentially 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, or 15 years, they would be able to create that $13 million wealth at around a $9 million net valuation. Also, the net passive income at that time is sitting around $155,000, but selling down a portion of that portfolio just enough to pay off the debt of any of the properties outstanding would help them to create even more cash flow. Obviously, this is going to be reducing the amount of properties inside the portfolio that are creating the rental return, but the benefit here is that the absorbing amount which reduces the income being debt is now being paid down, and that's creating $228,000 of usable cash flow at a net level each year for this investor. So you can see how different investors need to buy different value assets at different times and how they need to accommodate those properties inside their portfolios, because not everybody will be able to sell down at the right time. Some people have to hold longer, some people will have to sell first properties, some people have to sell late properties. It really is just a balancing game of understanding what your portfolio looks like in accordance to the income that you create, both from your wages as well as the assets inside them, and the debt that's held inside your personal name, as well as the properties inside the portfolio that's contributing towards that debt, so that the banks can find safety and security to lend you quicker and get into the property game faster to leverage more of that value for a longer period of time. We have a light version in the description that you guys can click on. It's for anybody that's not a client of the Investors Agency to have a little poke around to understand what your profile looks like in terms of leveraging the right type of assets into your portfolios according to the incomes that you generate. It'll give you some insights about the directions you need to head in. But if you do want more of a thorough expert insight into what it could look like for you, then book a call in with our team and the guys will go through exactly what that looks like for your financial profile, and we can actually build that out for you and display it to you and show you a little bit more around what the right property journey would look like and when you could be able to potentially sell down, repurchase and re-leverage into new stock and release the debt to continue to leverage into new assets into the future. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope you found value in this episode. If you have any questions around your leveraging abilities, don't hesitate to call our team or book a call in and have a discussion around what it could look like for you. But until next time, chat to you soon.